What's up, troopers? We are here for another TFT mini. This time we're going to talk about the art, Mike, of cohesion for coordination. Coordinate is a
Man, you're
keyword.
talking like a chat GPT bot.
I know we've been spending too much time with C3LP. But it's appropriate for this video because coordinate is a keyword that technically exists in multiple places in the game, but let's be honest, the main reason that coordinate exists is for these fellows over here, the B1 battle droids. And so for those other examples, like you could have geonotions, or you could be talking about the single coordinate that you get from a vehicle with onboard comms channel out to somebody else. But B1s always be chaining. They don't need to do anything special, but in order to get the juice out of it, you need to be able to use your cohesion in a particular way. Now, Mike, why is it good to be able to get as many in a chain as possible?
Yeah, I mean, the main reason is the more you get in a chain, the more orders you get on the board. And the more orders you get on the board, the more it means that your bag is reverse. We call it reverse sorting. And generally what that means is that the stuff in your bag sort of becomes what in other factions would be your face-up orders on the table, right? And so you would have complete order control or close to it with like some additional effects like improvised orders or something to that nature. And the more face-ups you get on the table through coordinate, the more it allows you to just be able to do whatever the heck you want whenever you want it, because you know exactly what you're going to pull out of the bag.
Yep, and it sure is nice to be able to do that. So you want to be able to successfully do it, which means arranging your units in the right way. This is something that especially new droid players will go through a period of oopsies, where you either deploy or move your guys around in a way that the coordination doesn't work. We're going to talk about a couple examples of that. But to start off here, we actually have a pretty good chain of orders. And so I'll just point out the way that the chain would go as things currently stand. So right over here, we have a generic T-series, which of course has direct to droid core trooper, which of course the B1 is an example of. It's almost always being used to send a free order to a B1. And the other examples of how you could start this chain would be either giving an order from the card or having HQ uplink on the B1. But regardless, so the way this chain would go is that this T series would direct to the guy that is right next to him. So that one makes enough sense. And then this guy could coordinate to this unit over here, which is its own unit. And then in order to demonstrate just like how this can work, these two units is pretty logical of why they could coordinate with each other. But then after that, we spread things out a little bit. So in order to point this out, these two unit leaders are quite far away from each other, Mike. I'd say that it's easy to say that they're more than range 1 from each other. They're basically range 2 plus from each other.
Yep.
And so how would it be possible, Mike, that two units where the leaders were slightly more than range 2 from each other would actually still be able to be a part of a coordination chain?
Yeah, so you definitely want to take one of your guys in the squad. You're going to cohere them out directly towards generally directly towards the unit leader in the other squad, and then you're going to do the same thing with the other squad, right? This size can be even larger in something like a super squad, right?
Yep.
Because you get to cohere even farther. But in this example, we don't have supers, so we're just doing the half range tool. And basically, as you can see in the example here, Evan has cohered these guys out towards each other. And if we stick that range 1 ruler between those two guys that we put down, we probably have some room to spare, and we do.
Yep.
We've got about a base and a half to spare. So
They could be even farther out. The unit leaders could be even farther away from each other and still get coordination.
Exactly. And you know, yeah.
So That can really matter. You typically won't be stretching across the entire board when you're doing a coordination chain, but you can stretch really far. And when we do our token sharing video, that will come into play there as well. But again, even with regular squads where you're doing half range cohesion, you can make a chain spread out quite a bit. And then for this example, it's also helpful to point out that we have a B2 unit that is on the hunt over here. They found some clone commandos that allowed themselves to get meleeed, where their lovely extra items such as their Katarn armor and their shields are not going to be super helpful anymore. And so these guys have a mission to get done. But unfortunately, the closest B2 mini is slightly more than range 1 away from the B1 leader, but relax, because not only do we have this mini cohesion all out here, we have this mini out here, which is legal cohesion with that leader, and definitely within range 1 of this unit. So that's a good reminder, is that in particular, the coordination from the B1 battle droid is just coordinate droid trooper. That can be any droid trooper. That could be this B2 over here. It could be another B1, of course. It could be a Magna. All sorts of fun stuff you can do. And you typically want, when possible, to arrange things so that you don't waste a coordination. So that is to say, as long as you have a droid trooper that can be the end of the chain, it's better to arrange your units in such a way that you can get to that end of the chain, rather than the last mini on the chain, or the last unit on the chain, being yet another B1 who is unable to coordinate to anybody because he's too far from everyone. So that's just like yet another example of what especially new players, but even then experienced players, they're not paying close enough attention to what they're doing. They can end up in a situation where they have the sad face of wasting an opportunity for coordination. And so for this example, to illustrate the different ways that a chain can go, we're going to be moving the T-series around a little bit. But before I start doing that, is there anything else that you generally wanted to point out about coordination, Mike?
Just that, there are generally two, I would say, like, general formations that this is going to kind of look like. The first we've illustrated here, which is what I would call like the line coordinate, which is you're coordinating from like left to right or right to left across the battlefield with the T-series. The other one is more of a circular coordination, where the last coordinate in the chain actually ends up on the thing that gave direct. So like the T-series, gives it to the B1, which gives it to another B1, which kicks it back to that B1, and then kicks it back to the T-series, right? And so that's more of what I would call a circular one. Those chains tend to be much more consolidated in like a pocket, as opposed to the one that we see presently on the board is more of a battle line and a battlefront. Towards the beginning of a game, you might be more in a situation where the circular coordinate chains make more sense, because you're kind of like keeping everything together, being a little bit efficient. Everything, hell hasn't broken loose yet. But like once the game starts going, you're gonna kind of find yourself in more of these line chains that terminate in the chain kind of effectively ending without giving the order back to your unit leader or whatever.
Yep, exactly. And then before I start moving the T-series around, this is just a good reminder. We talked about this a bit in the cohesion for defense video, but when these units inevitably start losing some B1s, because that is definitely going to happen, if you're interested in keeping this chain going, then you will want to remove minis first that have like less to do with that chain. So on this right example, if this unit were to start losing minis, then sometimes you end up in a tough spot where you have to choose between maintaining cover or maintaining the chain. hopefully you would have arranged things slightly better so that you don't have to worry about that quite as much. But generally, you would want to take minis away that don't disrupt the chain, because if I was sort of haphazardly taking this mini away when I got shot, then that we don't have a coordination chain in there anymore, and then we're sad.
Yep. And kind of going back to the chain versus circle kind of comparison, in once you have arrayed your units in this chain formation, your opponent all of a sudden is presented with some interesting options that allow them to like interrupt your flow a little bit here. So like if the configuration we presently have on the board is as it is, and it's like the turn is close to over, your opponent is presented the option with taking out any one of these like middle 3 B1 units, and if they're able to crush it with after they've gone, your chain will be interrupted for the next turn, right? And so I think the unit that's probably the most exposed is the far B1 unit to the right here at the moment, because the other ones kind of have heavy cover / line of sight blocking behind this big ice sculpture. And so if I was the opponent of this B1 battle forest right here, I would definitely be looking to put the hurt on this far right B1 unit. And you don't even have to kill the whole thing. You just have to kill 5 models in it, maybe actually 4, to basically put the B2s in a situation where they're not getting an order, and if they're farther than range 3 from a commander, they might also be triggering AI, right?
Yep. Or if you want to be really sneaky, then another option would be, like, let's say that out of nowhere this Arc Strike team shows up, is that if they engaged a mini over here, it would drag everybody over here to be in cohesion, starting with the unit leader, to be like base-to-base contact with the unit that started the melee. And
melee snapping, that's a different video,
that's
Evan.
That's a whole other video. But we're not going to show that in detail. But just to remind folks that would be a tactic that can also mess up your coordination chain. So let's talk about where the coordination chain starts, and this sort of thing matters much, much more for the line chain than the blob chain. Because usually for the blob chain, if they're all there, then it can kind of be in whatever order you want. You can usually end up with what you wanted to end up with. But
there's generally redundancies in the blob chain.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Versus with this line chain, we're going to start with an example of a place where you would have disappointingly few options. So if you were out here, and if you were like more than range 2 out from the B1 unit, then you would only be able to direct to this guy, and then you would be super sad. If you were going to be in a place that would make you slightly less, but still somewhat sad, like let's say you were here.
Could you move that a little bit farther to the left?
Yeah, so like let's say that you were here in terms of starting the chain, like next to this unit over here. Then that would mean that you could just send the order to this B1 unit into this B2, and then you'd at least be achieving something. But from here, you actually would be in a place where you can't get everything done that you want to, because the chain would start with this B1 unit, and then it could go from here to here. But then where is this guy going to go? There's no other droid troopers that are within range 1 of that unit on the left. And so in that example, you would basically have to choose between having the B2s up at all, or having these 2 B1 units up at all. And AI attack wouldn't come into play here because they would all be within range 3 of the T series, but that does dirty up your pool. You usually mid-game, you don't want to be drawing the B1s early. When you can avoid it, you're more likely to be digging for your vehicle or operative that is capable of doing more damage. And so having those sort of muddying your bag can definitely make you sad. And all this is to say that if you have a source of direct, then you need to constantly be thinking about what is your chain looking like. And this is especially true when you're actually activating the commander. in terms of where you want him to end up. It also, of course, matters when you're activating the others. But that is important to remember, is that you want to start out in a place where you can order the edge of the chain first, and it would typically be the edge of the chain that doesn't have the destination unit. And so in this case, you want it to start here so that it can go all the way through here, end up at the B2s. But if your commander is closer to the destination unit and it's a line chain sort of deal, then you are going to end up sacrificing a face up in one direction or the other. And that would have been an avoidable situation, so try to avoid it. So, Mike, what else is there to say about coordination chains?
I would say that it's not uncommon these days for separatist lists to have 2, maybe even 3 sources of direct, and and so you may have multiple of these chains happening within an army at the same time, right? You might have a T series, a super attack, and Kalani or something, right?
Or Dooku, because they're just giving it to everybody these days.
Or Dooku, right? So, you can set up situations where you have multiple B1 or STAP coordination chains that terminate in, a B2 unit or a BX unit or a Magna unit or whatever. And you should kind of have an idea or plan when the game starts on what you want those kind of. I would kind of talk about each chain as like an element in the army, right? And that element is going to need to kind of stay together, right? Otherwise, your order plans will fall apart a little bit. So make sure that before you go into the game, you have an idea of what you might want that to look like. And obviously, like, you can kind of reform that a little bit in that, like, anything that has at least one B1 in it could, like, you could add a couple B1s in this chain and subtract a couple B1s out of that one to kind of handle what you're trying to do. But you need just form an idea of how many chains you want in your list, kind of in the list building stage, I would say.
Right, because for any chain that you want, you would need at least one B1 unit, and that's actually coming into play now even more than ever with the advent of the customizable super tactical droid, because those units are often going to have the programming that gives them direct AI unit. And those units also, with things like slice comms and overclock and limiter override, they very, very much benefit from having a face-up order token. And a pretty darn easy way to do that is that you can direct into a B1. If you want to chain into some more B1s in the meantime, then you can do that, as long as you end up shifting that order directly back to the super tac that generated it all. That super tac would depend on having at least one B1 next to it in order to be able to do that, because it can't direct to itself because it does not have AI. So it needs to rely on the fact that the B1 actually has a looser coordinate that allows it to kick that order back to itself. So especially now, this was the case before, but there's so many different sources of directs in the CIS that you want to plan out sort of like what your little mini chains are going to be before deployment even starts, and that actually takes place in the list building phase as well. And then you will find yourself with a much cleaner bag and with a few fewer AI whatever activations. Okay, so that is cohesion for coordination and unit arrangement for coordination in a nutshell. We hope that you enjoy what we do here. Please do consider checking out the Patreon, but otherwise we will see you on the next TFT Mini.